As promised, let's speak to Majid Jafar. He's CEO of Crescent Petroleum. Hello to you. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. What do you want to see from climate change as the CEO of Crescent Petroleum?
So I think I actually agree very much with your previous guest. This is really all about the developing world, and there has been hypocrisy or double standards in the Western world. We saw in COVID, for example, trillions spent at home, hoarding of vaccines, but no aid to the developing world, which is lagging behind. And we're starting to see that trend, unfortunately, when it comes to climate change and the energy transition. €1 trillion spent in the EU or $1 trillion in the US is all very well. But if they can't come up with just 100 billion, which is nowhere near enough for the developing world, then we'll have a long way to go, because it's really about tackling coal in Asia and enabling the finance and the tech transfer for the developing world. So I'd like to see movement on those and some effort to get going on a carbon price. It's politically very challenging, but it does need to start now.
How can a company like yours be sustainable?
So I think for our industry, there are going to be changes, and there are changes in our processes and our products. So we're 50 years old. We're operating in the Middle East. We used to be more of an oil company. We're now 85% natural gas and looking at solar as well. And in terms of how we produce our product, we've brought down our emissions to near zero and then offset the remainder with carbon credits supporting wind power in China and Mongolia. And we declared net zero or carbon neutral across our operations a few weeks ago. But the world is still going to need oil and gas. It's just going to be using it differently. Natural gas is the quickest way to replace coal. It's how the UK did it, and it's how the developing world will need it to complement renewables, because renewables costs has come down, but you can't store solar and wind power. So you need something, either gas or nuclear, to complement it. And oil will still be needed for making things and for heavy transport. I mean, through the COVID pandemic, whether it was masks or sanitizers or even vaccines, they're all products of petroleum. And I think people underappreciate, even when we have electric cars, we're still going to need them, but we're going to be using them differently.
I read recently, sir, that you said blaming the oil industry, I'm quoting you, for carbon emissions is like blaming the sugarcane and wheat farmers for obesity. It all comes down to the consumer. Is that not putting an unfair burden on individuals?
No, it's not to just transfer blame this way or that way, but ultimately climate change and the CO2 and the emissions are a product of the entirety of the human society and the economy and the lifestyle that we have today. And there was a lot of prosperity that came with fossil fuels, but I don't think you can just blame one particular industry. If we choke off supply while the demand is still going up, we risk having more blackouts, more price spikes. And if people are colder and poorer as a result of climate policies, there's a risk that they reject them, and the planet can't afford that. And likewise, in the developing world, it cannot be that climate policies are in any way anti-development. We must appreciate that countries like India, like China, and you're absolutely right to have your colleagues there, are the center of this. They need to be able to achieve Western levels of prosperity, but they all need support and finance and help in getting there in a more sustainable manner.
We've been hearing quite a lot about hydropower here in the United Kingdom. Tell me about your company's investment in that.
So I'm actually personally invested in hydropower in Scotland, not too far up the road from you. So I think hydropower is very well utilized in Western countries, rich countries, Europe. It's actually very underutilized in places like Africa. I think only 3% of the potential hydropower that could be put on in Africa has been tapped. So I think that's a big area that needs more support. Nuclear energy is also very important. It'll work in more middle-income countries that can afford it. And again, standardizing technologies will be important there. Lastly, there's a big need for more R&D investment. And through COVID, we saw many governments, unfortunately, reduce spending in R&D. So I think that needs to be tackled as well.
We're almost out of time, so let me just ask you very quickly, what do you think success would look like from here at COP26?
So I think I'm actually quite optimistic. I think the level of awareness and the process is encouraging. I know the UK wants to achieve everything in this meeting, but it is a process. Next year is also going to be in Egypt, the year after that, hopefully in the UAE. So we're excited to be more engaged in our region on COP, and the UAE declared net zero recently as well as a pledge. So I think, again, coal in Asia, finance for the developing world, including perhaps a World Development Bank to channel that, as some economists have called for, and some movement on a carbon price. And I think progress can be made on all fronts.
It's good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.